Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is For a Pause in a Book. I make bookish videos over here on my little corner of the internet, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the books that I read in the month of October. October ended up being a really good month in terms of getting books off of my physical TBR and reading a lot of books. It was not, however, a good month in terms of the quality of the books at all. I had the lowest average rating of the entire year in October, so that sucked.
Thank you for acknowledging my feelings.
Thank you for acknowledging mine.
And that kind of tells me that I have a lot of mid books just sitting on my TBR. It's really frustrating because I had a five-star predictions video and that did end up going as planned. Not all of them were 5 stars. In fact, some of them were really not 5 stars. If you are new here to my channel, I am going to be talking about every single book that I read in the month of October. Some of them I will be doing it in like short, quick, condensed version because I've already talked about it in a vlog, so you've probably already seen it. We don't want to be redundant, but we'll go, we'll quickly go over it. We're going to talk about the books that I liked the least to the book that I liked the most, saving my favorite book for the end. We'll start with some like nerdy stats. If you're not a stats nerd like I am, then you can skip to the ratings of the books and what I thought about them, but I have a whole spreadsheet, okay? So in the month of October, I read 21 books and DNF'd another one. I'm not going to be talking about one of those, and that is due to the ongoing boycott of St. Martin's Press. It is a St. Martin's title, and in solidarity, we are not reviewing those books. So you're not going to hear me talk about it, but you'll see like my stats are going to end up being like a little bit off, if that makes sense. That's why. I read a total of 7,015 pages, which is a lot. Maybe other than like February and August, this is up there.
If I did that, I would literally write a song about myself.
I read 1 graphic novel, 1 novella, and 19 novels. I had 19 books targeted at an adult audience, 1 at a middle grade, and 1 as a new adult. I actually had no YA titles this month, which feels weird. And then we get to our star ratings because, like I said, this was a low average month for me. I only had an average of a 3.38. which really sucks.
Yes, that's concerning.
I had 1 1 star, 0 1.5, 0 2 stars, 4 2.5 stars, 4 3 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 6 4 stars, and 0 4.5 stars, and 2 5 stars. And then 1 that I didn't rate because I DNF'd it. In terms of genre, we definitely leaned more to the spooky side of things. So I had 4 fantasy, 8 horror, 6 romance, and 3 thrillers. Little bit of a mix there. So let's talk about the books that I read, starting with the one that I DNF'd, and that was The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pecknett. Now, I have liked their previous work. I really liked An Anonymous Girl, and I actually had a lot of fun with their short story, their novella that came out on like an Audible original earlier this year. And I think that this one is definitely more of a me problem than a book problem. This deals a lot with infertility and like being jealous that another woman is pregnant. And that's like one trope that like I just don't want to read about. I don't want to read about it. So I just put it down. I read about 120 pages and we moved on. I am going to be unhauling this book, but I did take it off of my physical TBR shelf. My 1-star read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I did talk about this one in my anticipated romance arc video that I did earlier this month. Listen, I don't put 2024 releases on my worst books of the year, but if I did, this would top that list. It was so bad. This was a mafia type romance, like mafia meets vampires, and it was beyond bad. I talked about it a lot in detail in that video, so I'm not going to go over it in depth here, but I think Ali Hazelwood and I might be done. We might be done. Because I kind of had like high-ish hopes for this because it was new for her, right? Her STEM romances are very much copy-paste, and I was kind of hoping that this one would be a little bit different, but it wasn't. He was the largest werewolf known to mankind. She was the tiniest little vampire. So we still had like all of the same tropes, and there were some lines in there that were just absolutely nonsensical. Absolutely nonsensical. Like, didn't know the difference between 2 different cooking utensils. And by cooking utensils, I mean like a ladle and a spatula. What? This book very much felt like it was her first work or a first written project, and then she shelved it while she published her STEM novels, and then now that she's an established author, she came back to this. It's definitely not as well written as even The Love Hypothesis, and we know my thoughts on that book. So anyways, it was 1 star. I do not recommend. It comes out in February if it sounds good to you though. If you want to hear my in-depth live thoughts on it, check out that vlog. I'll have it linked up above. It was a time. Next up, I read The Music of the Night by Angela J. Ford, and this is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, but like with fae. This book was boring.
All right, fill me in. Tell me everything I missed.
Won't take long, only 3 things happen.
I was going to do a full vlog on a bunch of Stuff Your Kindle books, but unfortunately, like every book that I read was so mid that the vlog was, I was boring myself editing it, so I didn't want to like put that upon you. So I made a short instead. You might have seen it. First off, it was a little bit weird that this was an author of color and the main character was a person of color, but you never knew that during the book. If you would not have seen the cover of this book, you would not have known that the main character was a person of color. This is about a girl who is a dancer for like a dance company, like an opera, and then she's like seduced by this phantom and it becomes this like fantasy romance. It was like almost beat for beat Phantom of the Opera, but then also like a fae war. So there's a lot going on. Next up, we have The Stranger in 8B by Nikki Castle, I believe. Here's the cover. This was a short novella about a woman who is pretty much seduced on a plane. Like she wants to just work on the plane and he does not work on the plane, and he's like trying to like talk to her and get her to open up, and then he like they like mess around in the seat. It's weird. This book is something that I would have read during Smut Den. It's all smut, no plot. There's not a lot going on. They end up meeting up at a hotel because the flight gets delayed or something like that. It was a time. It was a time. It was a book that exists, and yeah, I didn't have a fantastic time with it because you didn't connect with the characters. It was like 100 pages. But yeah, this was a book that one of my patrons chose for me, so thank you very much. I read it. My last 2.5 star read was Lone Women by Victor Lavelle. This was the group book for the buddy read for the Not Your Mom's Boozy Book Club that Cal and I run. I can see what this book was trying to do, but the pacing was so weird in this book that for a lot of it I was really bored. And it was like, so it started out on a really, really strong note. This is a historical horror about this woman who has this like trunk, and there's something inside the trunk and it's kind of ominous, and it takes place in like this western town, like parts of it in California, part of it in Montana, and like I don't know, the concept sounded really interesting and I heard some really good things about it. The beginning of this book is so strong, like it starts on such a high note, but then the action really drops off and you really just kind of get a little bit of character development, and it's just kind of really, it's slow going, but then you end up like it ramps back up and something happens and you get invested again, but then like once again you're bored, and so like it was just a roller coaster of emotions. So it didn't work for me, and I know that like historical horror on its own is not my favorite genre, so it kind of was at a disadvantage to begin with, but I had heard good things about this book and I was excited for it, and unfortunately it didn't vibe with me. So if you like historical horror and you like more of this like slow burn drawn out horror, maybe this will work for you. But for me, it really dragged its feet and I wasn't invested in it, and I didn't want to continue, like go back to the story at any point. I was finishing it because it was a book club book. Moving on to my 3-star reads, I'm going to talk about 2 of them together because they're pretty much the same book. They're very, very similar. And the first one is The Fall of Us by Kennedy Fox. This is an age gap, grumpy sunshine fall book. This is Hallmark After Dark is how I would like to put this.
That is amazingly funny.
A woman has come down to this small town and she's going to be taking some photos and she's going to be doing some paintings for this town for some publicity stuff, and of course there's no room at the hotel, so she stays with the like orchard owner's son, who's, you know, grumpy and doesn't like that she's there. And obviously like things happen from there because it's like basically an only one bed trope, but like expanded upon. They actually end up fake dating, which I do really enjoy that trope, because he sees his ex at like a town function and like he wants to make her jealous or something like that, and he's like, yeah, this is my new girlfriend, for unknown reasons. In fact, he actually didn't know why he did that, like in the moment. So they start fake dating, and like obviously fake dating turns to real dating. It was really cute, it was really cozy, it just didn't do anything like phenomenal, and they were kind of cardboard cutouts of characters, as one would be in a like Hallmark movie. Like that's why it felt like a Hallmark movie but with some steam. And then the second 3-star read was kind of very similar. It was Her Grumpy Neighbor Until Halloween, and this was also like a cute, fun, grumpy sunshine Hallmarky type book. This is about a girl who was house sitting for somebody and she is like struggling over there. Like they forgot to turn the power, like pay the power bill, so now she doesn't have any hot water or anything like that. So then she goes over to her neighbor's house, who's a celebrity chef, and it's kind of, it feels very Gordon Ramsay because it's British, and he's a celebrity chef, and so then he like makes her dinner, and then like it's a big age gap for this one. I think it's like 10 or 12 years, so like that's fun. And it's just kind of like a comedy of errors because like she is trying to house sit for this essentially farm, like there are goats and chickens and stuff like that, and then like she tries to like help him cook and she can't because, you know, he's a celebrity chef, so he has to cook for her, that kind of thing, you know. And then they like have sex after they have dinner together, and it's just kind of this casual arrangement, but then obviously they're gonna catch feelings. It was a fun time. This was the first book that I read for that Stuff Your Kindle project that didn't end up becoming a vlog, but yeah, it was fun. My next 3-star was Desert Creatures by Kay Chronister. This was part of my Haunted Maze Choose Your Own Adventure vlog that I'll have linked up above. There was like 10 different books in it, so we're gonna talk about a lot of them here. This book is 3 kind of short stories or 3 novellas that kind of are interconnected together in this post-apocalyptic dystopian world where the like livestock and the wild game are like, they have a sort of cancer, and so they can't like get food or anything like that. And if you like dystopian worlds, I think that this is great. The world building in this is really fantastic. My problem is that I didn't know that these are all connected until way too late into the book. Which is my fault. Like I should have read the synopsis. 100% my fault. This is more of a literary horror and it's more of a character study, so it is slow burn for sure. But if you like that, I think that this could work for you. It's just not normally my cup of tea. But the cover is gorgeous, like stunning, and I didn't hate it. It's a book that existed. My last 3-star read was The Shadows by Alex North. This is the second book that I've read from Alex North. I read The Whisper Man several years ago, and I definitely like that one more than this one. This one is more of a thriller than it is a horror. And there's like a police procedural aspect to it. There are 3 point of views, well 2, but like then a time shift. This is about a man who as a boy was the only survivor of this gruesome murder, and now there is a copycat killer, and so he's being brought in. Like, so there's like a POV, like a timeline difference where you're reading about the original murder, the original case, and then today, and then also you're hearing from the POV of the police captain. I have found that police procedurals are not necessarily my favorite, and you'll see that a couple of times in these books. I've kind of come to the conclusion that these are just not my favorite. Unless they're done like in a somewhat unique way, but I feel like I read so many of them this month and last month that they all kind of just jumbled together. I love police shows, Law and Order, Criminal Minds, and then obviously like Brooklyn Nine-Nine on the like more comedy side of it.
And that's your loophole.
I don't believe in loopholes.
What? Loopholes are the best.
But I think reading it is boring, and I don't know what that says about me. Moving on to my 3.5-star reads, I had 4 of them. The first is Breathless by Amy McCullough. This was also a book that I read during the vlog, that like Choose Your Own Adventure vlog, and this is a like isolated snow thriller where this woman is going to be climbing one of the tallest mountains in the world with this team, and as they go along in this like several day long hike, there's somebody that seems to be following them. There is a tent that gets set up just outside of their camp, and she's kind of getting paranoid about it. This is a very technical book. I would say that the author is either a climber or has just done a ton of research on it, because there is a lot of technical jargon in this book. So if you don't like that, this might not work for you, but like I had a good time with it, and it made it a little bit more clear for me, who does not do any type of hiking. I will say that the ending was kind of easy to predict. I don't go into thrillers trying to predict things, so like I didn't guess it, but I know that a lot of people did. There were a lot of comments in this video where people were like, yeah, I guessed the ending at like 50%. It's not necessarily your most like creative and clever thriller, but it's a good time. It's kind of like edge of your seat type of story. My next 3.5-star read was Hunted by Darcy Coates. This is another police procedural thriller horror-ish book about a girl who goes missing in the woods, and her camera is found, and there are like really weird pictures on her camera, and they're trying to use that to try to find her to see if she's still alive. This book took a turn that I didn't expect, and I kind of wish we would have seen more POV from the girl that was missing rather than just this group of friends that was trying to look for her. I don't know, I think it would have like kind of added to that tension if we would have had like POV chapters from the girl who was missing. That would have just kind of added to the anticipation, right? This is one of those thrillers where you don't know if it's a horror until the end of the book, because there is this seemingly paranormal aspect to it, but much like, say, Riley Sager's books, where you don't know, like, is it your mind messing with you, or is it an actual paranormal event, and you don't really know that until the end. So, like, I can't really say, like, oh, it's a thriller or a horror. It toes that line the entire book. One of the things that Darcy does so well with her books is her character development and making you really love and like connect with the characters. And I think that maybe this is what was missing in this book. And maybe because like you weren't with the main character, like, or with the girl that was missing the entire time, so you never really connected with the POV characters that you had. I didn't care about any of them until like halfway through the book. Like, I was like, okay, if you die, you die, great. Shouldn't have done stupid things. So this one was probably one of my least favorite Darcy Coates books, but I'll still continue to read her books for sure. Next up, we have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This was our Patreon group book for the month of October. We always pick a book from my TBR and then kind of read it together, and there's a Discord channel for it, so if you're interested in that, the link is down below. But I had a really good time with this one. This was really cozy, really cute and quaint. There's not a lot that happens in this book. It's literally about an orc that is trying to open this coffee shop and trying to like tell the townspeople what coffee is because they don't drink it. One of my favorite lines in this book was like, you take coffee with milk, kind of like you do tea. Then the customer's like, oh, so coffee is like tea. No, it's nothing like tea. And it's just cute and funny. And obviously, like, this is the staple of cozy fantasy. This is like the one that made cozy fantasy big. It put it on the map. So I'm not gonna like try to compare this to other books, but like it feels very TJ Klune. And I will be reading the sequel or the prequel to it technically. Like, I didn't hate this as much as I actually kind of thought I was going to. My last 3.5-star read was Hollow Kingdom by Kira Jane Buxton. This is a dystopian zombie book, but told from the sole point of view of like the animals that are involved and the animals that are trying to deal with the humans' mess ups. Our main character is a crow named Shit Turd, which is just funny. And he's doing his best, right? Like, he has a kind of a human that he hangs out with, and he's really, really trying, even though the human is not responding, you know, obviously. There's also a POV character from a poodle, and she's funny and adorable and exactly what your stereotypical poodle would sound like. And I think that this took this idea of like a zombie post-apocalyptic story and turned it on its head and made it kind of this humor story, because most of the time when you see these post-apocalyptic books, they're very dark, they're you know, end of the world, very depressing, and this had so much humor in it and it was funny. And I think that if you liked the cat's perspective, specifically if you like the cat's perspective of The Last House on Needless Street, you will like this book. They're very different premises, but the writing style and the like, just the little bit of humor that is in those cat POVs, this has a very similar vibe to it. Moving on to my 4 stars, the first one is a graphic novel called The Moth Keeper by Kay O'Neill. This is the same person who wrote all of the Tea Dragon Society books, and this is I think a standalone in another world. And this is about a young person who is tasked with this very like lonely job of caring for the moths so that they can go and feed on this tree where the magic happens for this town. And the job is very lonely, obviously, like you're by yourself, there's not a lot of socialization. And this was a really interesting conversation about burnout, which you don't see in like a middle grade novel, but there's this like whole community aspect of it, of like people not realizing that like, oh, this job is actually really hard and we need to come around and support this person. And it was just really cute. Kay O'Neill's art style is always so beautiful and majestic and just like I don't know, I read this in an afternoon on the beach when I was in Fiji, and it was just like, it was a wonderful time. There's not a lot involved in this. It was a pretty short graphic novel. But Kay O'Neill's books always have this like really strong punch in this same like whimsical type of way, and I don't know, I had a good time with it. There's not a lot to it, but I had a good time. I also gave 4 stars to Whalefall by Daniel Kraus. This was the sci-fi horror option for my Choose Your Own Adventure vlog. So I've talked about this one in great detail. This is very similar to The Martian, but in deep space. It's about a man who gets swallowed by a whale and has an hour left on his oxygen tank, and he's trying to get out and trying to like science his way out. What this didn't do as well as The Martian was the tension and the just anxiety inducing aspect of like being so close to death for the entirety of the book, because it kept flipping back and forth between the present timeline and like him reflecting on his life, specifically about losing his father. So there was a lot of grief horror in this as well, which has its own time and place, but I don't know if like when you're trying to escape the belly of a whale, literally, is the right time for that? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess you're reflecting on your life when you're about to die, but like I didn't care about those chapters. I just wanted to see him get out of it and like be a little bit more science-y. But this was a really quick read, and it had a lot of complex themes in it, but this was a very quick read, and the chapters were so short, which really helped with the anxiety inducing tension. I just wish we would have like had maybe a chunk of the like before and then a chunk of the present timeline rather than like every other 3 to 5 pages going back and forth. That was like really my only complaint with this book. I gave 4 stars to both Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead and Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, and I'm going to talk about these two together because I feel like they have very similar premises. I talked about it in my vlog that these books are essentially 2 sides of the same coin, that they are like these 2 authors got the same writing prompt and then wrote a different book from that same prompt. So this is very much a Bonnie and Clyde type story, and it's about a girl who's a pastor's daughter, and she grows up in a very conservative household, very religious, and these 2 kids a long time ago got into some trouble, tried to hide the evidence, and thought they did for a long time, but now it's coming back into light, and some things are happening, and also a cult. This is about a woman who is going back to her family for her cousin's wedding, I believe. And there's a lot of family drama in that because she was the black sheep of the family. She kind of ran away from her family as an 18-year-old and like went off and did her own thing, and also a cult. This one does the cult in more of a satirical way, I think, whereas this one does it a little bit darker. This one also has a really open-ended ending, so if you don't like that, be careful. I will say that I liked this book better, so if you haven't watched that vlog, you just got spoiled. I like the way that this one did it, and I just think it was a little bit more out there. I think it could have even gone further. I was actually watching the live show for Jan Agaton's book club about this, and this is actually the first book that I've read from Rachel Harrison, and apparently in her other one, Such Sharp Teeth, I think, it went really far into the gore and the body horror, and this one I think was set up for it but then was reined back in, and it probably would have been fantastic had we gone a little bit further. I also gave 4 stars to House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, and after reading this I definitely want to read Year of the Witching even more so because I really liked the atmosphere and the world building and the vibes of this. Also, it's sapphic. I didn't know it was sapphic. But this is about a woman who is a blood maid who is essentially the lunch for vampires, a family of vampires. And she is given, like, you know, she works for this family and provides her blood for them. It has kind of like The Handmaid's Tale meets vampires kind of vibe to it, but then also make it a little gay. There's not a lot I can talk to you about this book without like absolutely spoiling the entire thing. Like, it's a very, very short book, but I definitely recommend you picking up if you like those vibes. It kind of has a gothic feel to it, but I'm not a fan of gothic books, but I'm not actually normally a fan of gothic books, and I really enjoyed this one, so don't like let that put you off. I think that if you liked A Dowry of Blood, this might work for you. And then my last 4-star read was Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. This one saddens me a little bit because I gave 5 stars to the other other two in this series. And this is a good conclusion to the series, and I liked seeing all 6 of the girls kind of together and like living their best lives. But I think that the anxiety representation in this one is a little bit too real for me, and I think that maybe that's why I didn't love it as much. Because cringe is the wrong word for it. Like, I wasn't cringing at it. I was just like, I had anxiety myself. There are some very real depictions of a panic attack and of anxiety, and also her friends, Stevie's friends, are the literal worst, like the absolute worst. Please, like, dump those friends. So Iris Kelly is our main character. She is Astrid and Claire's friend, like in that original friend group, and she has been dumped so many times, or like just does not have great luck when it comes to dating, as you saw in the books before. So she's decided she's going to swear off dating. She's not going to do that anymore. But she's also a romance author, which does cause a problem because she doesn't actually believe in romance. So she auditions for this play, this like queer community theater where they do like queer retellings of Shakespeare. They're doing Much Ado About Nothing, which is a whole production. It's a fun time. And one of the girls that's in charge of this production asks Iris to fake date her because she kind of told her friends that she was dating somebody and then she needed a girlfriend. So they decided to fake date so that like Iris could help Stevie with that issue, and then Stevie was going to like take Iris out on dates and show her how to like be romantic for her books. Obviously, fake dating is going to turn to real dating. There's going to have feelings, all of that fun stuff. This is fun, don't get me wrong. It is my least favorite in the 3 though. I didn't have any 4.5 star reads, so let's talk about my 5 star reads. The first one was A Shade of Madness by Tiago Abdallah. This is the second book in the Touch of Light series, and just like A Touch of Light, I loved being back in this world. It's so immersive, it's so expansive, and I can't imagine like the mapping that is going on in Tiago's office.
Oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
I don't know, first off, his mind is stellar. This is such a phenomenal story, and obviously the plot like thickens and it goes like it explodes into so much more that's going on, and I can't talk about much of it because it's definitely going to spoil Touch of Light, if not this. But this has some of my favorite buzzwords in fantasy, specifically some badass characters, well, these are griffins, not dragons, but like same concept. And then also a like religious war, and 2 sides feeling like they are correct, but obviously like they're probably both wrong on some aspects, but they are fighting for what they believe is right. And I absolutely love a made-up religion in a fantasy story because the author can go so many places with it. So I highly recommend this. The audiobook just came out earlier, I think last month. I want to say it was last month. So I highly recommend this series. The audiobook is fantastic. It's such a well done production, and the audiobook finally came out for this one. That's why I kind of held off on reading this one after finishing Touch of Light, because I kind of wanted to listen to it on audio. And then my favorite book of the month, if you made it all the way to the end of my Choose Your Own Adventure maze, that was Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This one came out of nowhere. I've had this book sitting on my shelf for a long time, and the Goodreads Choice Awards like category for my Choose Your Own Adventure vlog was a kind of last minute addition because I wanted to round it out to 10 books. And I'm so glad that I did, because I don't know when I would have picked this book up otherwise. This is a very witchy, very aesthetic book, and obviously I read it the day before Halloween. So like obviously I was kind of in that mood, in that vibe, and it's a very moody book.
My emotions are in overdrive.
But it's also kind of a descent into madness, another buzzword for me. It's kind of got almost this like villain origin story to it. It deals a lot with trauma and dealing with trauma and taking back your independence and your autonomy. And it was really, really good. I definitely understand why people wouldn't like this one as much. I think this is going to be a divisive book for sure, but it worked for me. This is about a girl who has to save her city from this monster, and you kind of find out more about this monster as it goes along. It's a little bit of a slow burn, but like my god, when you find out, oh, I was like sitting here just like crocheting as I was listening to this book, and like stopped me in my tracks. I was like, okay, I see what we're doing here. So we love a good plot twist like that. I will say this is probably more fantasy than it is horror, even though it was in the horror Goodreads Choice Awards. This is a very grown-up, very dark comparison to The Near Witch by V. Schwab. Same vibes, very different story. Same vibes though. There's a little bit of a romance in this, there's a little bit of a mystery, and there's also a father whose magic goes a little haywire when he's mad, which is all the time. Highly recommend this book. It is one that you kind of have to be in a good headspace for because like I said, she's dealing with a lot of trauma. She's dealing with some abuse or like past abuse and trying to work through that. So be in a good headspace, but my God, this book was good. This book may end up on a favorites list. All right, so those were the books that I read in the month of October. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book was this month. And if you're not feeling chatty, do a turkey emoji. Because it's November, it's Thanksgiving here in the United States this month, and yeah. That's all I have for you today. If you're new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, and my Patreon are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!